Sometimes what a bassist needs is just one piece. This is a compressor, and the compressor makes loud things quieter and quiet things louder. And if you play bass and you're sloppy, oftentimes, especially when on stage, it's very difficult to control your picking or your plucking hand and the volume of those notes, the velocity. A compressor normally squeezes your velocity so that the quiet things are louder and loud things are quieter. It helps the sound be more focused, more compressed, hence the name. Easy up on guitar? You just aren't playing it right. Yeah, for sure. Bass is very simple to begin because most of the songs you play are like or something like that. You basically play the root notes and you're like following the chords. And these are very easy to play, though your hands hurt, and as opposed to guitar, both left and right if you use your fingers for plucking. And the reason behind the myth that bass is easier might be the fact that it has normally 4 strings and a guitar has 6, and 4 strings are like easier to play. It's not very easy to play the bass. You have to be very groovy when you play the bass. You got to keep the or something. And if you're not rhythmically aware, if you're not very, very confident in your rhythm, you can't play the bass. All this noodling is not playing the bass. The bass is all about the groove, and it's really, really hard to practice and master and achieve the top level of grooviness. But I wouldn't say guitar does not have to be groovy. Everything has. So in my opinion, bass is equally as hard to learn as any other instrument if you want to play it really well. But to begin, a guitar probably has more requirements and more skill, because the bass again is just or something like that. But that's not all of the bass. Oh, and by the way, I'm Vadusha and I'm the greatest bass player in the entire world, and maybe even on YouTube. Appreciate your bass players, guys. They need it. Yes, absolutely. For some reason, bass players are underappreciated. But it's the bass that makes the chord. The bass is the instrument that makes harmony happen. So if I play this chord, what chord do you think it is? There's a C sharp, then a third from that, and a third from there. And you get a C sharp minor chord. But it suddenly changes its characteristics to somewhat E-ish. Because the underlying bass note is the thing that determines what harmony is going to happen. And it's very, very important for the rhythm thing to be active. The people on your dance floor will never ever dance if your bass player is sloppy, like Fender unprecision bass. That is funny. If you take a look at this, it has no frets. It's like a violin or a cello or a double bass where there's no frets. You can hear it goes in distinct steps. It's distinct because it has the middle frets. And wherever I move my finger in between the middle frets, it doesn't really change the tone of it. But when I go from one fret to another, it does. So that's the difference. And with a fretless bass, wherever you put your finger, there's gonna be a note. And you have to have really, really, really precise ears to hear what the note is and where it is compared to everything that's happening musically. And it's very easy to be like a quarter tone off. We can imitate it with bends. So there's an octave. That's a perfect octave. There's the A and an A up above, and it makes an octave. But let me imitate a little bit of a note off, the same way it would be on a fretless bass. If I do this, you can hear there's some wiggling, and I'm looking for the note, and it goes back home, and goes away. So bending is somewhat similar to this effect, because you change the pitch, and it's continuous change. It's not discrete as with frets. So this continuity demands you listen really, really well. And it's very hard to play. And that's why it's unprecision, because most of us can't hear the notes as well as it's required to play a fretless instrument. Fender bass through decades. Oh yes, the technology has been changing a lot. But the bass, it has persisted through the years. And I have somewhat a different bass. It's a different shape, and it's not a Fender, it's a Steinberger, which replicates Hofner. And it's a headless bass, so it's a different make of a bass, but the idea is very much the same. There's frets, there's pickups, there's knobs, and there's an output. That's pretty much it. Nothing much changed. So basically this is this, but with a different pickup setup. Chuck Norris does not follow a metronome. The metronome follows Chuck Norris. Love those Chuck Norris jokes. Is it a Firebird or a Thunderbird? What's the bass? Didn't know Chuck Norris played the bass. A lot of celebrities play the bass, by the way. How bass is to warm up. Yeah, it does take a little bit of finger strength to play the bass because the strings are a bit thicker than those of a guitar. So you have to have some muscle in your fingers to really make those notes happen. It's not as easy as with a guitar. That's why it's harder to master the bass muscle-wise. It's harder on your fingers. But it's not as dramatic as they tell you it is. Bass line written for world-famous bassist for an iconic rock song. Let's take a look at it. That's pretty simple. And there's the bass line for a Super Nintendo game. Let me take a look at that. What? I can't really play it. These are guitar tabs. Those 4 lines are strings. So string 1 is on the top and string 4 is on the bottom there. The thickest is this one, the thinnest is this one. Those are fret numbers. This means this is the A string, this one. And it's playing zeros, and zeros is when you don't fret anything. Just do this. Whenever there's a fret number, like here, 3 and 5, you go this string, 3rd fret, you can do this, and then this string, 5th fret. So it's basically a bunch of zeros, like this. My bass, me. That's Will Smith slapping Kevin Hart or whatever the comedian is. But slapping the bass is one of the coolest techniques you can use. And slapping the bass is when you do this. That's a slap. You use your thumb to slap it, literally. And it makes buzzing noise because the string touches the frets like this. But slap is not just slap, it's slap and pop. So you use your fingers to pop like this. So basically you do this. That's a slap, that's a pop. I'm not the best bass player, but slapping and popping is my very favorite technique. Oh my god, how are you so good at that? Yeah, this takes quite a lot of muscle strength. And you learn to work your fingers, and these two hurt as hell when you learn that. But once they roughen up, you can do it all day long. I actually don't play with a pick. All my guitars have pick holders on them. I play all my guitars with my picks. But the bass, I never ever play with a pick. I'm not sure why. Not because of the meme, for sure. I just like the sound and the feeling and the way I can control the music with my fingers rather than controlling it with a pick and a bass. So yeah, you really master your finger work with your bass. When the bass player makes a mistake, everyone in the band thinks they made a mistake. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Let's imagine the band is playing this chord. This. Like a guitarist. They do this, and everybody is happy. But take a look at this. There's a bass player making a mistake. What? The bass is what makes harmony. And if the bass contradicts anything higher in the note scales than the bass, everything else sounds wrong but the bass. The first time you plug your bass into a full stack, yeah, the sound of the bass from a bass stack is amazing. It just pushes your heart out. It's so great. I have this little tiny thing that's not made for bass. It's a guitar amp, but when you use a bass amp, and it's like a full stack bass amp, the feeling is amazing. It shatters all of you. When you play a groove, it just makes you feel different. So yeah, playing through a loud amp, it does damage your hearing, but it makes an impression. Alright, there's another one. Me, the right note when I'm playing the fretless bass. It's very hard to hit the right notes when you're playing the fretless bass. With a fretted bass, it's more like this. With the fretless, it's like... what? Bass solo. Basically, this is what I was talking about at the very beginning of the video. The joke is that most of the bass is just following the root notes of whatever chords are played, and if it's an E chord, it's just any string. You don't have to fret anything. Your hand is free. You can smoke, you can drink, you can tap somebody on the head. But there's a lot more to bass than just following the root notes of chords. When the keyboard player starts playing the bass line, yeah, there's nothing wrong with keyboard players playing the bass lines, but if some people in the band play the same line at the same time, it just gets messy. There's not much room for them in a sonic spectrum, so the basic idea of arranging your pieces is to have the bass playing some range and then the guitar player playing somewhere else frequency-wise, so that the entire range is covered, or at least there's no sonic conflict for a certain range. That's why you have to equalize things, to take away from the bass drum but leave some room for the bass. Take away from the guitar and leave some room for higher bass notes. Take away from everything and leave a lot of room for vocals. But if you play two lines, same kind of lines, in the same kind of range, it normally messes the track up, unless you want to have an all-together moment like this. Have the guitar play different notes. So if the bass is playing this, let the guitar play not this, but say an octave higher. Or something. It's just more powerful, and no two instruments occupy the same frequency range. Another thing when playing the bass line with a keyboard is that the keyboard is tied to specific keys. You can play a bass line like this. It's okay, but it can't play a bass line like this. Or something. It can't do the slide thing, and slides in bass are very important. One thing is when you play like this, and a completely different thing is when you do this. Or something. Thank you for watching this video till the very end and not skipping any bit of it. It lets YouTube know the video is interesting, and YouTube starts promoting the video, especially if you subscribe while watching. And while you are subscribing, please like the video, especially if you have a heart. I hope you found something helpful in this video and learned something, because you're awesome. Yes, you are.